Welcome back, everyone, to the Fly Culture Podcast with me, your host, Pete Targis. I hope you're well. Are you getting fishing? And if you are, I hope you're enjoying every single second of it. In this podcast, I'm talking with Jon Harris, who is a contributor to Fly Culture magazine. He's done a number of articles now, and we've got one from him coming out in the autumn edition. But we have a really nice conversation about fishing, his fishing timeline, and what it means to him. And I think this is going to resonate with many of you. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. Great to have you along, Jon. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Pete. Thank you. And you?
Very well indeed. Thank you. It's a bit warm down here in Devon. I'm even wearing a shorts right now, which I wouldn't inflict a picture of that on anybody. But how have you been from a fishing perspective? Are you getting out much?
Probably, well, not right now, Pete. It is really warm here as well. And I've had a reasonable season in the amount of time I've been fishing, but I think probably like a lot of people right now, it's warm. There are other things on my mind, and I'm probably not out quite as much as I have been. So yeah, I'm missing it a little bit. It's kind of, chipping away at me, but I'm going to have to bide my time.
That's okay to do that as well, isn't it? And I put something out on my socials this morning about that, and Tuesday it felt okay, but I've just seen this warm weather that we've had, and I've just made my own decision that I'm going to leave it for a bit. I think we got a little bit of cooler weather and perhaps some light rain coming next week, so that may take us back. But you touched on your year so far, so how has it been? How would you rate it on a 0 to 10?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, Pete. I think it's probably only about a 5. And if you'd asked me a little while ago, I'd have probably put it higher than that. But I think it's been a weird season. It's the rivers are very low, and I don't think we've had a day this season when the river hasn't been fishable. So that combined with a really warm weather we've had right from the start has probably meant it's been tougher than usual. I've enjoyed it. I mean, there's been some great days. But overall, probably not the best season, but a long way from the worst.
That's okay. I'll take a 5. It's like you say, we just have to roll with whatever we get, don't we? And there's so many times where we think, oh, that's a 2 and it ends out an 8 at the end of the year. Yet 5's a good place to start from, and that might edge up into those high numbers. So I'll keep my fingers crossed for you. Right? Yeah, absolutely. So we make hay while we can when things cool down a little bit. But I saw some pictures you put on your socials recently, and I saw that you caught some grayling. Is it nice having those back on the fishing menu?
It is, it was a big surprise actually, because I've probably not fished for grayling as much in the last few years. It's just been more difficult in the grayling season, as it were, through the winter. I don't think the weather's been ideal. Been a lot of spates in the river. I just don't seem to be out as much, and I've not seen as many grayling in the rivers I fish either. Normally, well, I'd say a few years ago, I was catching, I don't know, 2 or 3 grayling for every half a dozen trout, perhaps. But that's changed. And the last few seasons, I've seen very few grayling, particularly in the mono. So to find this one last week or whenever it was a real surprise. And I wasn't looking for it. And I really thought it was a trout. So, but it's probably the third or fourth biggest grayling I've got out of the mono. So I was quite surprised, but it was nice to come across it. As I say, they seem to have been a bit few and far between recently.
Well, I keep my fingers crossed that you do entangle with a few more of them. And you've alluded a little bit to where you're based, but for listeners, can you tell us where you're actually based?
Yeah, so home for me now, Pete, is in Monmouthshire. We live about 5 miles from Usk, 6 or 7 miles from Chepstow. So I'm kind of between the Wye and the Usk. And pretty much all my fishing is now on either the Wye or Usk catchment. So a lot of the main rivers, but also a lot of the tribs that come into those rivers. I feel completely, blessed, I guess is the word. I mean, I'm from this county, but moved away and lived away for quite a while. And when we came back, about 20 years ago now. I can't think of a place I'd rather be living and fly fishing. I mean, there are just so many beautiful rivers within, you know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes from where I live. So, yeah, I feel very lucky to be here.
And you said about being between the Y and Usk, and I often say that I live between Dartmoor and Exmoor and say that it's not a coincidence. Was that part of your process when you moved back into the area to be near a catchment of some sort?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you talk to the family, the reason we came back was because grandparents were on hand at the time, and our daughter was a baby, so that was the real reason for coming back in this direction. Plus the fact you can do a job with a computer and a phone these days from pretty much anywhere. So that was the real driver. But I think it's not coincidental that we ended up where I can fish quite comfortably between some of the great trout rivers in this part of the world. So yes, it was on our relocation list. It was higher up my list than Nikki's.
And where were you before that?
Most recently, we were in Hertfordshire, and prior to that, we were in Hampshire. So we've been living in England for quite a while. And we're both actually from Monmouthshire, so it was coming home. There was that element to it as well. But yeah, Hertfordshire was a bit of a dearth for fly fishing. But at the time, I probably had a bit of a break from it anyway. But back in Hampshire was when I first started fly fishing, and back in when I was in my 20s, so a long time ago. So yeah, I love that part of the world, but I don't think I'd swap it now for Monmouthshire. Frankly, it's
Huh.
I forget. When you're a kid, you can't wait to go somewhere else, and then when you're a bit older, you think actually there's nothing wrong with where I came from, and so I think we're going to be in that downsizing situation very soon and deciding where to go. And my vote is going to be not far from where we are now.
Perfect. When you were in Hampshire, did that mean that you were fishing lakes and rivers there, or a combination of both, or one or other?
Well, I moved there when I was, I don't know, about 21 or something, and for work. And I had always been fishing, but up until then, it always had been course fishing. And moving to Hampshire just put me in a different position. I was doing some course fishing, but I met a few people and just by accident got into fly fishing on the Itchen through a friend. And that, I think, was probably it as far as fishing was concerned. And I've done almost no course fishing since. And so I got the bug very quickly then. And I was lucky because I had some access on both the Itchen, several of the other chalk streams there. I had some access on the River Rother over near Midhurst as well in West Sussex. A colleague there had a stretch on the Rother. So for most of my 20s, it was really fly fishing, and obviously chalk. And I never really got into still water fly fishing, and I haven't since. I've done it a few times, and I'd rather do that than not. But really, it's been rivers, and it's always been rivers, I think. So yeah, that's really where it started in Hampshire. But I go back occasionally to the chalk if I get an invitation or if there's an opportunity. But I don't know. I think I'm firmly in the freestone rivers now. It just seems a bit more probably what I'm used to, and a bit more used to when I was a kid as well. Before I started fly fishing, I fished the rivers locally here. Yeah, so that's. I don't regret living in Hampshire. I loved it, and I love the chalk streams. But I think I'm settled now in what I do for chasing trout up these wild rivers.
And did that take some adjusting then, going from, I'm guessing, fishing waters where you could see the fish to a degree of fishing the water on some of those freestone streams? Was that a culture shock or a change or something that needed some adjusting?
Well, I think it would do. So I think the answer is yes. But I had a kind of. It turned out to be about a 10-year break from fishing, really. And when I got to about 30, I was traveling a lot. Um, and for several reasons, I just sort of stopped fishing. I didn't fall out of love with it. It's just it didn't happen, and I found it more and more difficult to, maintain a membership or find any time for it. And so I had about a decade where I really didn't fish, and then 10 years later we moved back here, and so that's about 20 years ago. And then I started fly fishing again and haven't stopped since. So I think that break actually meant that I didn't have much of a transition. I kind of couldn't remember the routine I'd been in. So I just started fishing the rivers here, and they were, you just have to adjust to what you find. But it's obviously different. And if I go back now to the chalk, then it's I feel as if I'm a little bit as a fish out of water. Actually, I'm much more comfortable with not sight fishing, with sort of trying to read the water and figure out where they're likely to be, rather than stalking down the bank, spotting a fish, and then um, casting poorly to it or something. So I just feel it's I didn't have to make much of a transition because I had that break anyway.
And so was that move part of, moving home to Monmouthshire, was that something that reignited the fishing thing for you then?
I think it just gave me opportunity. I think it was one of those things that I used to beat myself up with, the fact that I wasn't getting out and doing what I'd enjoyed. And because I've been fishing since I was a kid, and I'd been fairly obsessed with course fishing, as a teenager. I was always disappointed with myself that I'd had this break and I didn't find the time for it. So it was a very quick adjustment. And suddenly I found myself with a bit more time, you know, great rivers on the doorstep, plenty of opportunity. I mean, I'm in a few clubs now, but in the beginning there were lots of day ticket opportunities when I first moved back here. And getting on lovely stretches of the Usk was quite straightforward. So yeah, I just it was one. We were unpacking, when you move to a new place as you do, and you're finding stuff. But I knew exactly where my fishing stuff would be, and it was, I was unpacking that before the boxes of kitchen utensils and stuff. So I came back with a very determined to get going, and I did. So yeah, no, it was always part of the master plan.
That sounds absolutely perfect to me. I want to move on a little bit and learn a little bit more about you as an angler as well, and wondered, how do you actually like to fish? Is it a dry fly? Is it a nymph, a tandem, or is it all good as far as you're concerned?
I think it's kind of all good, but the answer really is a dry fly, and I think that's changed a bit. I mean, it's not unusual, is it? I mean, most of us go on these journeys where you try all sorts of different things, but I kind of at the point now where um, I would much rather catch a few fish on a dry fly than a lot more fish, nymphing or something. So, and that's something which is just taking me a while to get to. I know. I mean, there are people I know that are dry fish, dry or die, and they won't change. And I don't think I'm like that. But this season, for example, I think I've put something other than a dry fly on maybe just one occasion, and so that's how I definitely prefer to fish. Um, but I mean, there's no doubt that you know if you want to catch a lot of fish, then there are other ways and more productive ways of doing it. And I remember when I first learned, I used to traditionally nymph fish with a upstream nymphing, a nymph and a spider, maybe a shorter leader, retrieving it, and that's how I originally learned it. But when this Euro nymphing or tight line nymphing or whatever people call it these days became fashionable, and I first got exposed to it, I couldn't believe how many fish you could catch. And I remember the guy who first showed me it was I was lucky. I was fishing with an international angler, and he caught 3 fish before I got in the river, and I was still threading the rod, and he'd already caught fish, and I couldn't believe it. So I persevered with that for a few seasons, and it is you catch a lot of fish, but I did get a bit bored with it, and I think I'm still in that fairly I'm still a bit bored with it. So I've got to the point now where I'm not as bothered about catching as many fish. There are other things that take me to the river. And so more often than not, I'll have a dry fly on there and I'll just be sat watching for a fish or maybe prospecting a bubble line where I know there'll be a few. That's probably how I fish most of the time now.
Nice. And if you get some time to fish, how do you allocate it? Is it you put aside a day for it, or do you prefer to snatch the prime times and perhaps in the early morning or later in the day you say to yourself you're going to grab a couple of hours? What do you prefer?
I think nothing will stop me going fishing all day. So if I get a chance and I can schedule it and the family are happy with it, I'll disappear, before breakfast and I'll come home when it's dark. But realistically, I have to grab some time when you can. And so the evenings are easier for me. I can get to the Usk within 15 minutes. So I can pop out to the Usk for a few hours after dinner and nobody is, any the wiser. And so whatever river it is, that's probably how I fish most of the time, just because it's easier. But if I have a chance and I can go out for a whole day and just really take my time with it, if I've got a friend with me or I'm meeting someone, then you make the whole day an experience, and it's less about the amount of time you might spend casting. So all of those are important, and they all kind of fit in somewhere across the season. But I don't have the luxury of being able to, fish 5 days a week. And even I thought when I stopped work, I thought, I had this thing in my head that that's what would happen, but it hasn't materialized, and it's not like that. And you kind of wonder, how you ever had time to sort of earn a living. But yeah, I don't. So I don't get to fish as much as I'd like to, but I'm not sure that I ever would. I don't think it's actually possible. I don't know whether that makes sense. But I think we're probably all the same. You get out when you can, and you have to balance it with all the other things that are important too.
Yeah, good answer. Good answer. You alluded to it a little bit as well, that if you're fishing with a friend, you make a day of it. But do you have a preference? Is there times when you like to fish alone? Those times when sometimes you feel that you need to fish and clear your head or just recharge, but equally fishing with somebody as well is equally as fun for you. And if you do you fish in a different way when you're with company?
I think the answer is both, and I think fishing on my own has always been important in that it's probably the thing that has just allowed me to to get out and get away from other stuff that all the usual crap that bothers you all the time. And so fishing for me has probably always had that element where I'd like to be on my own. I'm the sort of person that gets energy from my own company. If that makes me an introvert, it's probably true. I'm not going to run towards a party of people to sort of get an energy from that. I find it from myself and reflecting and just get my own time. So I think that's always important for me, and I'll not stop doing that. But fishing with other people it's probably a relatively new thing for me. I've not had a fishing buddy for forever. I know some people do, and that's great. That's their thing. There are people that I really enjoy fishing with, and I do love to get out with friends and spend time with them. It's a relatively new thing, and yes, we definitely fish differently because fishing isn't competitive for me. It's not even competitive for with myself. It's just, to me, it's the antidote to competition. I spent all my career, competing all the time, and I can't stand it. It's not. I don't feel naturally competitive. So fishing for me has never been a competitive thing, and so the people I fish with are probably very like-minded to me. It's relaxing. It's the company. It's you know we do take it in turns to fish. We're not competing with each other. I rarely fish with someone and meet them in the morning and meet them again at lunchtime. I'll fish with people. We'll spend all the time together, and we'll take it in turns as we move up the river, and we'll stop and chat and, eat something, drink something. So it's a relaxing day. And we do like to catch fish. I mean, the people who say it's not about the fish, I just don't believe that. Because you just go for a walk otherwise, wouldn't you? So it is about catching fish, but it's not having to. I don't feel compelled to have to catch the next fish or more fish. But I think it's wrong to say you don't want to catch a fish. Otherwise, what are you doing, waving this stick around? It doesn't make any sense. So, but it's the people that feel like that are probably the people that I fish most with, and will always say yes to an invitation to fish with somebody like that. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And some of the things you touched on there as well reminded me of the time when we met up and fished the Upper Tor together for an afternoon. And it was very much one on, one off. Let's try this. Let's go there. Let's do this. And it was super relaxed. And like you say, I'm so not competitive as well, that you just take pleasure in someone else catching a fish. And I think that may be one of the things that makes a fishing relationship work. I can see how the competitive friends, that might work as well, but in a slightly different way. But I think, and I've talked about it many times on here before, that having a fishing buddy that you're super relaxed with, you don't have to catch the biggest, the most, or whatever it is. And that makes that whole process a whole lot easier. And as a result of that, a whole lot more fun, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. And no, I agree. And that afternoon we fished, Pete. One of the things that struck me was, and you were extraordinarily generous, and I do appreciate it. You said to me at the beginning, because we knew each other. I don't think we'd met maybe, but we hadn't fished together. And I don't think you knew whether I would even be able to send a fly in the right direction. And you said to me something that right at the beginning. You said these fish are incredibly quick. And I thought such a lovely thing to say, because what you were really saying was, if you can't catch any, it's all right. and I remember thinking that was just such a lovely, generous thing. And you were right; they were incredibly quick. And I missed the first 4 or 5 at least. And I got my eye in a little bit, and I caught, and so but it was such a nice thing. And I agree. I still don't know why they're so quick, because I don't think I've fished anywhere where the fish were quite as fast as that. But that's an aside. But yeah, no. Fishing with people who just seem to have a similar outlook is important. And to be fair, I've met very few fly anglers that don't. And the competition bit is interesting, because I know some good competition anglers. They're lovely people. And when you say, why do you do that? It seems to be always because of the fun element. It's the social, it's the crack, it's that goes around the competition seems to be more important than the actual competition. And I can understand that. But I don't think it's for me, even if it's just a good day out. I think it's just not something that I probably not bother with now.
Absolutely. And you say I'm being generous about those fish. And funnily enough, I had Robin down, who lives on the Wye catchment, and I said this conversation came up, and I said, because I was fishing with Roger Smith, who wrote that beautiful book, and I used to get the day in the Wild Trout Trust auction, and we became quite good friends as a result of it. And I was saying to Robin, and I always get a little bit of anxiety when I'm fishing with people I don't know so well, and worry about, if I miss this, if I miss that, they think, sometimes you worry about those sorts of things. And I said to him, the first fish I cast at, it came up, and it was in I think it was Craven Arms neck of the woods. It was round there somewhere. And this fish came up beautifully, ate it really nicely, and I lifted into it, and the fish was on. And I was super relieved about that. But our fish here are, and I said to him, exactly the same thing. And I used to when I was guiding as well. I said, look, it's nothing you're doing wrong. Some of them just come from deeper in the water column, I think, and explode on the fly, and sometimes just miss it. Sometimes they try and drown it. Sometimes they might come up and over it. So you just never know what's going to happen with them. And they're a bloody pain in the backside to try and hook sometimes. So I used to start the day saying to everybody. You know, you're going to miss some, but don't take it personally. It's not anything you're doing. They're just a blooming nightmare to hook sometimes. So, and then of course the antithesis of that is when I used to go into the chalk stream, and you'd have to wait forever for them to eat the fly,
Yeah.
and desperately say, and I'd have the mantra in my head again about saying, don't set too fast, don't whatever you do. And so it's an interesting dynamic, but they're fascinating little fish down here in the way that they eat. But you did amazingly well, and it was a fantastic afternoon that I can picture exactly where we were fishing now and what the weather was like, where we met, all of those sorts of things. So yeah, they're things that you can. I don't. It comes on interestingly, actually, that I often say on here. I don't keep a fishing journal, but I remember that really, really well. Are you somebody who documents their fishing and what they do and where they've been?
Oh no, that's way too organized for me. Um, I keep a good catch return. I think that's important. And so I'm very particular about, making sure that I submit a good catch return. But I don't keep a journal or anything like that. It's I think the thing is, Pete, I don't know whether how to explain it properly, but I'm not sure I take it seriously enough. And I don't mean that I don't take my fishing seriously because I'm passionate about it, but um, I don't want. It's almost as if I don't really want to have that information to hand because I don't want to get distracted by looking at it or going over it. I mean, uh, I think it's a little bit linked to the fact that I don't practice much. I like learning. I like learning about, I'm open to new things all the time, but I'm not obsessed with it. I don't take it very seriously in that sense. So I'd rather I'd rather just pitch up, remember, what I know, and give it a go. And I'm not looking to for a any sort of scientific process for what's going on. It's just not that important to me. I appreciate the people who understand those things. It's like I know enough entomology to be dangerous, but not anymore. I can cast to most of the fish I see without being a good caster, and I'm okay with that. And I think actually that's part of the attraction is that I enjoy being mediocre. I don't quite know why, but and with a lot of other things, I'm not like that. But with fishing, I am. I'm okay being average. I enjoy the fact that I love talking to people who know a lot more than me about it. I'm trying to pick their brains much, but I don't know why. I don't know why I'm like that with fishing, but I am. I'm quite happy being, yeah, just I go fishing, Pete. I'm not in fishing. I said to you that before you started recording it. There are people that love this sport and they make it their life and they're in fishing, and I appreciate them a great deal. I really like talking to people like that when I meet them. But I'm just someone who goes fishing, and I think there's a big difference.
So that brings me nicely on to a question that I sort of penciled in this morning. And it was, is fly fishing then something you do? Or is it something that transcends that a little bit more? Because I often say, well, people might go cycling, they may play golf. So it's something in those leisure categories. But is it something a little bit more than that to you?
I think it's definitely more, but I think it's yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not sure I can explain it really well. I've always been someone I like mucking about on rivers. When I was a kid, I just mucked about on rivers, me and a few mates, and that became fishing. And fishing became, what we did on the rivers as well as other things when we were young. And I've always been drawn to rivers. So being on a river is is a huge part of, I think, what makes me me. I don't really sure how I can explain that, but I will seek out a river, even if I don't have a rod in my hand. Um, so I think a large part of it is just the what I get from being on a river, um, and being in that environment. and then trying to fool a brown trout into eating something on the end of my line is an extension of that. And it has become very important to me. So in that sense, yes, I go fishing, but I don't go fishing the same way as I might ride a bike, which I don't, by the way. But so I don't know whether that answers the question. There's something there that's deeper than just a pastime, the desire to catch a fish that takes me to rivers. And then I think the fishing has just become, maybe it's an excuse to get to the river. I don't know. Perhaps that's another way of looking at it. But I wouldn't be without it now. And I will keep doing it for as long as I'm physically able. Of that, I'm certain.
I think that answer will resonate with many people, myself included, that it does, and that need to be. And I often write about hearing the water, standing in it, being close to it, those sorts of things. It is something in us, isn't it? And it is very hard to explain to people if they don't understand that part of it. And often when we do our gatherings, I end by a quote I said in the start of one of the magazines, that I'm a fly angler. If I had to explain it, you wouldn't understand it. And I think that encompasses some of what you're saying there. It's really hard to encapsulate those feelings, possibly because there's so many, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. It's, I mean, I've given up. I mean, I don't have many really close friends that fish, in the sense that a lot of my close friends just don't fish and never have. And I've given up with the conversation of trying to explain it to them. And it's not important to us anymore. You know, we've been friends forever. Um, but I'm not sure it's that I can't explain it well enough, or whether we're just on a different wavelength when it comes to it. But I think you either do understand it, it's something which captures you, or it doesn't. And that's great. All around. I really don't mind. So I've given up trying to explain it to people now, because I don't have the articulation to do it. It just doesn't work. But it's lovely when you meet someone who's on that beginning journey. When there's a couple of guys I know who've not been fishing long, and they're in that incredibly enthusiastic stage where they do get it. And I think, when they're as old as me, they'll still be doing it because they clearly, they've got the gene, or whatever else it is that captures us like that. I think it's an interesting thing, but it's probably the same with every pastime, every interest. I mean, there are plenty of things that I don't understand why people do it. That's what makes it interesting, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. I wanted to move on a little bit, and you talked about you fish with some competition anglers and some friends, but has there been anyone that has been a big influence on you as a fly angler?
That's an interesting question. I don't think so, actually, in that sense. I never had my parents didn't fish. I never had a relative that got me into fishing. I don't really know where the obsession came when I was a kid, but I was completely obsessed with it. Through my early teen years, it's all I wanted to do. And I had one friend, who was the same age as me, same, in my class in school, who was similarly obsessed. And so we spent all of our time fishing somewhere, canals, rivers, the local lakes, wherever. And it was a true obsession. But to answer the question about fly fishing, is I don't think I've not had a mentor in that sense. I had someone introduce me to fly fishing when I was, later on, as I mentioned, in Hampshire. But I don't have someone in that sense that I think has been a big influence on me. I was slow to social media. That's another thing. I was not interested in it for a long time. I couldn't understand it. And then I discovered that you can connect to people with the same interest to you, and you don't have to really have a broader audience than that. So now if I look at Facebook, for example, which I'd say I'm a light user of Facebook, pretty much all my friends on there are anglers and fly anglers, and so I've met some people through that I wouldn't probably have not have met previously, and therefore I have a group of people that I can talk to, that I can invite to come and fish with me, and vice versa. And so I think that's how my social part of fishing maybe it kind of works. But I wouldn't say there's an individual that's had a big influence on me in that sense. Um, a number of people now that I know in and around this area that will fish the Usk and the Mono catchments, and members of the same club and so forth. I regard them highly. I enjoy spending time with them, and we have we can chat all day about the same sort of stuff. But I'm not sure that there's somebody that stands out as being a big influence on me in that sense.
Perfect. Let's move on some more as well. And you write for Fly Culture, and I was just thinking, you mentioned your daughter, and I think she took some photos that we put in there as well. But do you like to read fishing literature?
Yes, I do, and but I think it's again, I'm probably a light consumer of fishing literature in that sense. It's many years since I bought the typical magazines and journals. They don't interest me much. Um, when fly culture first came along, and as you know, I've supported it from the start, and I was very keen and curious too, actually, as to whether something like that could work. And it's fantastic that it has. It's just been, and I really look forward to every edition. So I love that kind of fishing literature. Stories about fly fishing, stories about the people that fly fish and why, and um, that's interesting to me. And I suppose I've got quite a few Girac books. He's probably my favourite author for fly fishing, but then he would come up in most people's lists again because it's not about how you go fishing; it's about the experience that you have fishing. That's probably what interests me if I read anything about it. It's um, I can't remember the last book or magazine I read that taught me anything about how to do something. Um, Probably comes back to that fact that I'm quite comfortable being average. I'm not looking to expand my knowledge in that sense. So yeah, my literature on fishing is more to do with stories and experience, and that sort of thing.
And that's a really interesting answer for me as well. And thank you for the kind words about the magazine as well. And funnily enough, I guess, that you talk about Girac, and although it's not comparable in any way, but I think with Fly Culture, we've tried to do a similar thing, that it's focusing away from this is the latest fly you need, this is the latest rod you need, those sorts of things, and the experience. So I'm sure that has permeated into me in some way, in the way that I look at fishing. And when we decided we wanted to bring the magazine, that was the route that we wanted to take. And I was also aware of not stepping on other people's toes who are covering those things as well. So I think there's probably an element of that in there as well. And it's been wonderful seeing that we've got other authors coming through now. We've got Boo's got a book coming out soon. I think Ben's working on something. I'm hoping Chad and Russ will. Steve Duda's book, River Songs, who we've had on the podcast, is, again, modern tweak on those things, which is really interesting to read. And again, focuses away from that. And it is, you say that you don't consume a lot of magazines and stuff, but do you think, from what you've seen, and I guess it's a slightly trickier question because you describe yourself as a light social media user, but do you think that there is that shift starting to happen away from the fish to the broader context of fishing in what you see and read too?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's, I think blogs seem to have died a death. And I started writing something on that, quite a while ago now, and can't be bothered with it anymore. Um, But I think if you look at social media, it's a tricky one, Pete. I'm not an expert in this stuff. There still seems to be plenty of people who just hold fish up, week in, week out. So there's an element of that. But I do think that more people are interested in um, the sort of stories that remind themselves of why we do what we do. And there are a lot of anglers that enjoy, I'm sure, learning about new things and new techniques. And there are some, you know, experts in the field that are more than happy to keep writing about that. But I do sense that it's become more interesting to look at fly fishing in a broader context of where it can take you. I think the social aspect of it is interesting. I know you've run a few trips with folks to Italy and maybe other places, but I think that those sort of experiences are more interesting to folks now. Reading about different locations that we might not have thought of previously as typical fly fishing locations is one thing. So I just feel that there's more of a it's a broad church fishing, but I think fly fishing in particular is something which I'm not convinced it's ever going to be a really big to be much bigger than it is now, and so I think there are people that are always sort of looking to ask those questions of what we can do to change the trajectory, if you like, of fly fishing, but I'm just not sure it's a useful question. Um, I think it has to compete in an ever complex world of interesting things, and so it's going to attract a certain group of people. And I think it's more important that we do it in the right way. We do it with a view on sustainability and that type of thing. We think that through, and rather than worrying about whether we've got attracting a lot more people to it. That's just a personal view. Maybe it's taken me a while to think that. Maybe a few years ago I've had a different perspective on it. But yeah, that's probably where I'm at now.
I like where you've taken that little bit with the growth side of it. And I'm sort of coming to the conclusion that it's almost fly fishing's like a ladder. And as we get older, we all go up a rung. And then there are people young, and what I mean that by an age group point of view. And then there are younger people who come in on the lower rungs and then come up, and we all get to the top, and we either say, well, we're too old to do it now, or other things happen as well. And so there's people leaving fly fishing and there's people coming in, but that's fine, isn't it? And we are okay where we are. We're not going to change the world. We're not going to take over the world. We are this little pastime that people, and again, you said something really interesting about people taking the broad church. And I was thinking, well, people can take within that broad church, they can take whatever they like from it, can't they? That they can, it might be that they want to go and catch a big trout. It may be that they like tight line nymphing. It might be they want to fish a dry fly only. It might be tying flies. It might be building a rod. There's all those sorts of things. And that's the nice thing, isn't it? That feeds into that church, as we should call it, of fly fishing, that people can sit wherever they like within that church and take exactly what they want from it. But the church, there's never people standing outside trying to get in, is there?
No, exactly. And I don't know what it's like everywhere, but there. It's not. It's the clubs that I'm. We don't have waiting lists that go on forever, but neither do we have a problem finding a few new people to join. So I think there's I get asked occasionally, where's fly fishing going? I have no idea. I have no idea whether the state of fly fishing in that sense, is in a good place or not. I think it's in a good place if our rivers are clean. I think if it's in a good place if there are plenty of wild trout to be in those rivers. I think it's in a good place if small fisheries can survive. If put and take fisheries can make a living, then I think then it's in a good place. And of course, these things will go up and down. So there'll be periods where it's it's tougher, and then it may improve. But I think overall, I've stopped worrying about whether what I do is going to still be around in long after I'm gone. I think it's just something which is a group of people enjoy doing, and if you can keep doing that with a similar outlook, then that's what it's about. And I'm not I'm not overly philosophical about thinking in a different way around it. I think that people who do ask those questions, then that's great, and if you can come up with new ideas to improve what we do, then that's great too. Um, but personally, I'm not. I don't think it's a really helpful discussion because I think there are just too many variables. I'm more concerned about our rivers declining for other reasons, and that our what we love to do becomes more difficult for that. What we love to do might be more difficult now because of the climate, and that's something else which I'm not an expert on, but I only see what I see, and that is that we seem to have a lot of space, all through the winter, and that's unusual compared to perhaps what it was used to be like. And we seem to have summers that are more like the one we're experiencing now, where the rivers become a trickle. We can't fish for extended periods. So I think those sort of things are more interesting in terms of where this is going, rather than individuals' attitudes.
Good answer. And I think you've covered those really well without us going down a rabbit hole of climate and particularly environmental damage as well, or vandalism. So we will move on from there. Just wanted to talk to you about tackle as well. And are you somebody who is a tackle hound who's fascinated in rods, reels, and lines, or you just go with the flow?
Probably much more go with the flow, Pete. I'm not. I don't have a big collection. I have what I think I need for what I'm doing at the minute, and if that changes, then I'll get something else. But I'm not. I think I have 6 rods at the minute, and I probably use 3 of them most of the time. So similarly with so I once I get to the point where I'm comfortable with something, I have a few rods that I really like using. Um, I have a Sage SLT that from the early when did they come out? Early noughties.
90s, yeah, 90s.
Late
I think I bought mine in, yeah. So
Well, I've certainly
I
had it.
maybe noughties actually, yeah.
I've certainly had it 20 years ish. I can't better that at the minute, and I'm terrified if something happens to it. So I know I've got a nice Hardy that's a little bit longer, and that's a little bit more all round, probably a bit better on the Usk than the Mono. Um, I've got a nymphing rod, which, as I said earlier, has been in its case all year. um, so, but it is a very very nice rod, and it's actually it casts quite a good dry fly as well. Um, and then I've got a little brook rod, an inexpensive 7 foot 3 weight, which is lovely for the smaller streams around here. And I don't envisage getting anything else until one of those, I have an accident with it. Similarly, I've got two or three nice little reels that work nice. So that's probably my answer. I'm not looking for the next big thing. And I'm probably of the opinion that if I wanted to catch more fish, I should get out in the garden and practice a bit more rather than worry about what I'm what I'm using. Although, having said that, I did talk to someone in a pub the other week who put me onto a uh, new leader. Well, I've been using the same sort of leader forever, and I tried it and thought, wow, that's quite good. I really, yeah, that's made a difference. So maybe I should maybe I should have more of those conversations. Oh, I knew you. As soon as I said that, I thought he's going to ask me what it was, and I've forgotten. And it begins with a V. Goodness me, Alex. If Alex is listening to that, he'll be laughing now. What was it? What did you say, Pete? Sorry. Yes, exactly that. And yeah, I was quite impressed with it. It made my casting seem a little bit better, and so that's a good thing. So I'm going to stick with it.
A few episodes back in Fly Culture magazine, you wrote about a special occasion for you, a social, the Mono Social. It had some beautiful pictures from Gareth Lewis in it too. But this one means a lot to you, right?
It is, and it's become a special event for me, I guess, and those that have experienced it. And it's not something which I would have anticipated either. I remember going along initially, I don't know, maybe 9 years ago or something, um, just because I wanted to get access to this river, not expecting to enjoy the company of 30 other people in a field. But yeah, it's grown into something which is really important to me. It's a great annual event, and I'm sure anyone who you've spoken to who participates or has participated in that will say something similar. It is not about the fishing; it's about the people. It's about the camaraderie. It's about having a good laugh um, with like-minded people who do kind of understand what it is we do. It's a good cause too for the Mono Rivers Association, so it raises some money, and that's a group that have done an amazing things for that river. Yeah, but it's become important to me for those reasons, and it's something I really look forward to. It gets penciled in, um, every year into the calendar. The family know not to even consider something else in those first few weeks of May, which is when it's going to land.
They've also done some amazing things there for the river system, including the eradication of Himalayan balsam, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 25 years since they started on various projects, and um, Balsam became the one, and they still spend time every year on that as well. But I think it's just an interest. You look at it and say, what can a few really dedicated, passionate people do if they put their minds to it, and they get a bit of support and some funding? Then there's a good example. And I think it's as simple as that. It's not overcomplicated. It's a few people who really care, and are prepared to get on with it. And that's good to see. There's no red tape around it really. They just sort of get on with it, and that's nice to see. And it's not a reason that I fish the mono. It's not a reason, but it's become important to me. I support the Rivers Association whenever I can. I'll host some people on the river now, and I'll participate in auctions and to do that as well, because I think it's important, and it's also a river that has become important to me. I don't have 25 years of history with it. I only have 10, but it's one of those rivers that's got under your skin, and there's not much I can do about that.
Have you travelled much with a fly rod?
No. Short answer, Pete. No. I'll go to if I get invitations, then I'll definitely try and accept that if and reciprocate. So and that tends to be relatively local, certainly not outside the country. I have cast a line in um, the Pyrenees once. I've cast a line in Slovenia once, but it's not something that it's kind of on my annual calendar. Um, I think mainly because there's always been other pressures for vacation time, and the family don't fish. They wouldn't appreciate coming with me for on a fishing trip. So it's something which I've been reluctant to just take off and do it. Although I think we're getting to the stage where that's perhaps more manageable going forward. So who knows? I've not got anything against it. I've been quite happy to experience new things with a fly rod. But up until now, it's not something that I've spent much time with. And I got so much fishing on the doorstep. I can't exhaust it. Even the few club memberships I have, I probably can't fish all of the water in the season. So uh, yeah, it's maybe in the future. No, exactly. That is true, and again, that's something which some people don't fully appreciate. But um, there's nothing better than sneaking out after dinner for a few hours and finding yourself on the river and that's familiar. And I like new rivers. I love. We had a new beach at one of our clubs this year, and I loved exploring that new mile of the river. Still not got to grips with it yet, but so I enjoy that, and finding out what's around the corner that you haven't seen before. But there is something special about going back to your own river that you do understand, where you know where you can stand and where you can't stand, and where the fish are likely to be. There's something special about that, and I think I'll always want home water.
I like that. I often say there's no place like home. But if you had a week or 2 weeks that you could travel anywhere to, is there somewhere that springs to mind?
If you'd said a few days instead of a week, Pete, I'd have gone up to the river, to my home river, and I'd spend, I'd camp overnight, so I didn't have to come home. But as you said, a week or two, I think I have to say that probably I think I'd go back to Slovenia because I love the country, and there's so much. It's a beautiful fishing location, and I would love to see more of it. To places I've not been at all, Iceland appeals because I've seen and read a lot about that, and I've been to Iceland I've been to Iceland on business. I've not really seen enough of it, but I think that probably would be where I'd go. I'm not sure I'm minded to sort of travel across to the US with a fly rod anymore, or even further afield, somewhere wonderful like New Zealand. I think maybe Iceland would be the location I'd choose that I haven't been to, and wave a rod around there. I think it's a special place. It's unlike geographically, it's unlike most places people visit, and so it's got a different interest because of that.
Nice choice. Nice choice indeed. Now, I know you don't do a great deal on social media, but if people want to connect with you, how do they find you?
I'm not difficult to find. I think, Jon Harris on Facebook is about as complicated as it gets, Pete. And apparently, I do have a what's the other platform? Instagram. Yeah, I've got an Instagram account apparently, but I hardly ever look at it. And I must have set something up, whereas if I put a picture on one of them, it appears on the other, which I didn't really know about until until recently. So, yeah, that's probably not the best. I'm not really minded on it, but Facebook is probably the only one. But as I say, I'm not hard to find.
So here it is, the dreaded question. It is the hypothetical road trip playlist song choice. And I've got to apologise once more to listeners that I haven't updated the list on Spotify for a little bit, but I guess you get the gist of what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get a sense of somebody's music choice, and it might lead you down an interesting rabbit hole as a result of it. So, John, what do you have for us?
I've heard you ask other people this question, Pete, and I forgot about it. Otherwise, I'd have thought in advance. But so, what would I put on? Okay, well, one of my favorite bands has always been Counting Crows. Back from the mid '90s, I really loved them as a band. So I would put a Counting Crows track on it, and I will choose "Holiday in Spain." And if it's not something you've got to go and listen to it because it's a great track.
Is that the album with Mr. Jones on? I really, really liked that one.
It's not on that album, but you've got the right band, and it's an Adam Duritz song, and it's a cracker. But I mean, pick any Counting Crows song, Pete, and I'll be happy with that.
John, it's been wonderful to catch up with you as always, and thank you for being a wonderful guest on the podcast. I think this one will go down very, very well with people. So thank you for your thoughtful responses.
Pete, thank you very much indeed. It's been a privilege. I said to you at the beginning, I thought there was a bit of an imposter syndrome going on here. I'm not angling, Pete. I just go fishing. But it's been an absolute pleasure. And long may fly culture continue to be successful. I think it's been a breath of fresh air for all of us.
Well, everyone, this has been another episode of the Fly Culture Podcast. As ever, there'll never be any charge for these. I just enjoy talking to people like John about their passion and their love for fly fishing. These people just feel like we do about it, and it's too good not to share. As ever, there'll be plenty more episodes coming very, very soon. But thank you so much for listening to the Fly Culture Podcast.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.